My daughter came home crying after being invited to a Christmas party at my in-laws. When I asked her what happened, she silently handed me a wrapped gift. "Mom, look at this." "Why do I have to go through this?" she asked, upset. I was shocked when I quickly looked inside. This was not a present for a child. I rushed to the police and asked them to find out who gave it to her. The police investigation revealed that Ed was the one responsible, which caused a big uproar among our relatives. Ed faced severe punishment for his actions. I am in my 40s and my husband, who is in his 30s, works at the same company as me. I joined this company in my mid-30s after leaving my previous job because my boss called me an old maid for not being married at 30. At my current company, they value skill over gender or age. My husband, who later became my direct supervisor, took good care of me. When I joined the company, my husband and I had a shotgun wedding, and now we have a daughter in 3rd grade. She's a quiet girl who loves reading and is kind to everyone. My husband has a troublesome sister and my relationship with her is not good. Luckily, I get along well with my in-laws, so things are somewhat smooth. My sister-in-law adores her brother but dislikes me because I'm older than my husband. She looked down on me for having a shotgun wedding, calling me names like old hat and saying I was just full of desire. Despite her words, she used to come over a lot when we first got married. She would mock me for having a baby at an older age, saying it would be hard to get my body back. She laughed at my big belly and said it might sag to the floor and that I'd go gray from the stress of childbirth. Before leaving, she'd always say things like, "Just age more and get dumped by my brother." I tried to ignore her, but I felt hurt and inferior for being older than my husband. Sometimes her mean laughter haunted me. Then, shortly before I was due, she revealed she was also pregnant and had a shotgun wedding. With her own issues to deal with, she stopped coming over and moved to another city after marrying. This drastically reduced our chances of seeing each other. I was relieved not to deal with my sister-in-law's sarcasm anymore so I could focus on my childbirth. Later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The birth was tough and took some time, but my husband encouraged me by holding my hand. When our daughter's first cry echoed in the delivery room, my husband thanked me and said, "You did great," and we both cried tears of joy. 7 months after our daughter was born, my sister-in-law had a baby boy. She started visiting our house, a 1-hour drive each way, just to make snide comments. She compared her children, saying things like, "It's obvious that a kid born to an older mom would have a wrinkled face. My kid's skin is so smooth." The age of the mother at birth really affects the child. I was dumbfounded. I was too busy with new parenting challenges to pay much attention to her remarks. The problem was she never brought any baby supplies. She'd come without spare diapers or formula and then take a bunch home, saying she didn't want to run out. She even took home unopened formula as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I was baffled by her behavior of coming to insult me and then taking things home. But then she stopped coming. My husband said her husband's job involves frequent transfers and they moved to a different state. We finally had some peaceful times. Until our daughter started elementary school, we enjoyed peace. However, we found out her cousin, my sister-in-law's son, was also enrolled there. We had moved back because of my husband's job transfer, and I knew our peace was over. Despite our rocky relationship, my daughter and her cousin got along well. My daughter, who was bigger, sincere, and kind, took good care of her cousin, who was very popular and always surrounded by friends. When they reached the 3rd grade, they ended up in the same class. One day, my daughter won an award for a reading reflection she wrote for a summer project, which even got published in the newspaper. The whole family and relatives were talking about it. Their school operates on a trimester system with a 1-week break between summer and winter breaks. We were visiting my in-laws during that time. This time, perhaps because they heard about my daughter's award, there were relatives present who usually don't get together. My sister-in-law didn't like that our family was the center of attention. She said, "It's not fair. That book was supposed to be for my son, but your daughter took it." The truth was they had just swapped books. They couldn't decide which book they wanted to read, so they agreed to swap after finishing. After each of them finished reading the 2 books, they discussed and decided together which book report they would write. My nephew liked the book my daughter ended up using for her award-winning reflection. My daughter read the book first and then let her cousin have it. When I explained this, my sister-in-law accused me of writing the reflection for my daughter. She must have heard from my husband that I used to write novels as a hobby in college. Unknown to me, my sister-in-law spread rumors among the parents at school that I had a connection with one of the judges and had asked for a favor for my daughter's writing competition. My daughter heard the rumors and became very downcast, even stopping reading her favorite books. Seeing her so upset, I reached my limit of patience. I couldn't stand it anymore. Not only was I upset, but now my daughter was the target of mean comments. I wanted to discuss everything with my in-laws, but I first confessed everything to my husband. For the first time, I told him everything his sister had done to me since we got married. She had even taken clothes I bought for my daughter when she was a baby, saying, "Babies can't tell the difference between boys' and girls' clothes." She hit me and called me fat when I was pregnant, saying I looked like a sumo wrestler and should try a sumo stomp. My husband was furious, saying those were terrible things to say to a pregnant woman and that his sister's actions were like theft. He decided we should share this with his parents, and he would be the one to tell them. Then my husband and his parents went to my sister-in-law's house together. She was surprised to see her parents suddenly but was overjoyed to see her beloved older brother. However, she ended up getting a harsh lecture from him and started to resent me. She said, "You snitched to my favorite brother, you old hag. Acting like a tragic heroine must feel good, right? It's the worst for me though. Take responsibility, you old maid." At first, I answered my sister-in-law's calls, thinking she was apologizing, but she was just venting her grudges. After that, I set her calls to go straight to voicemail and ignored them. The calls stopped after about half a month. I thought she got bored because I wasn't responding, but later I found out that wasn't the case. In December, my in-laws organized a children's Christmas party. It was the first time they did something like that, so I wondered why this year. My daughter was excited to receive an invitation. She had fond memories of a Christmas party at her kindergarten and thought elementary school would have one too. However, her school didn't do it because of their stance on religious events. I thought, why bother with religious reasoning when Christmas has evolved in its own unique way? But apparently, some parents are quite fussy about it. I told my daughter we should do it at home, and we had our own family celebration last year. She enjoyed exchanging gifts at the party. The invitation for the party at my in-laws stated that we should prepare a gift within a $20 budget. My daughter and I spent time at a nearby shopping mall choosing the present. She picked out one of her favorite picture books, hoping to share her thoughts with whoever received it. On the day of the Christmas party, she carefully held the present she picked and happily headed to my in-laws. Their house is a 10-minute bus ride from the bus stop and a minute's walk from our house. I let my mother-in-law know my daughter was coming, and she offered to pick her up. 10 minutes later, my mother-in-law called to say my daughter had arrived, and I finally relaxed. But 30 minutes later, everything changed. I thought my daughter would be enjoying the Christmas party by now, but suddenly I heard the front door open. It was a weekday, and my husband was at work. I was working from home because my daughter was on winter break. The door opening unexpectedly alarmed me, so I hurried to the entrance only to find my daughter sitting on the floor crying. I asked her what happened, and she handed me a gift-wrapped bag. She said I would understand once I looked inside. I took out the contents and found a torn-up newspaper with my daughter's reading reflection printed on it, along with a message card. The card, written in red ink, said, "If you get too cocky, you and your family will end up like this stuffed animal." There were also patterns that looked like blood splatters. Peeking further inside, there was a stuffed animal that had been torn to pieces and splattered with red ink. This was too malicious to be a joke. There was no way my daughter would coincidentally receive such a gift during the exchange. When I asked my daughter what it meant, she said my sister-in-law had prepared this special present for her. This year's Christmas party was supposed to focus on the children, so we all agreed that adults should not personally prepare gifts. That's why I didn't go with my daughter. Despite this, my sister-in-law was at my in-law's house, knowing what she had done to us. My mother-in-law would have informed me if my sister-in-law was there, but she was there without my mother-in-law noticing. My daughter said my aunt told her she wasn't allowed to call grandma and mentioned something about only children with connections to missionary schools being allowed. My daughter asked what a missionary school was, and I didn't know how to explain. Recently, one of our relatives passed the entrance exam for a missionary school, and it had been a big topic of conversation. My sister-in-law's son also attended a missionary kindergarten. There were stories about relatives not knowing they were enrolling in a missionary school until it was too late, making us realize that many of us had connections to such schools. We sent our daughter to a local kindergarten and neighborhood elementary school. My sister-in-law must have thought using this topic would be a way to scold my daughter. I told my daughter to stay inside with the gift she received, and I rushed to the police station alone. I argued that it was a serious threat, but the police suggested resolving it within the family. I insisted that threats and violence, even among family members, should be reported. Not only were there threatening words, but also a threatening letter and a mutilated stuffed animal, which I argued was malicious. A female police officer happened to pass by and pointed out that threats and violence within a family are still reportable offenses. She empathized with how scared my daughter and I must have been. After I provided my sister-in-law's address, she promised to go and warn her right away. I was relieved, but I shuddered to think what might have happened if that officer hadn't passed by. It was disheartening to realize that some police still won't act unless it's an actual incident or accident. I wondered how I could protect my daughter in case of an emergency. That evening, when my husband returned from work, I told him everything that happened. He was furious with his sister for ruining our daughter's fun out of spite. He immediately called his parents to protest since the Christmas party was at their house and they supposedly didn't know anything about it. They claimed they had no idea my sister-in-law was there. They had left the back door unlocked, so she might have entered that way. My mother-in-law apologized for not paying attention to who was coming and going, as she was busy picking up other grandchildren. Nearby, my father-in-law had been away at work during the day. The Christmas party was mainly organized by the middle school-age nephews and nieces, and my mother-in-law had mostly left it to them. Apparently, the police officer had firmly warned my sister-in-law. She was told that any further reports could lead to more serious consequences, so things should be fine for the most part. However, my in-laws were distressed by my sister-in-law's actions, which had escalated to involving the police. This could potentially lead to criminal behavior. Consequently, they called a meeting with both our family and my sister-in-law's family, with the parents present for discussion. When we arrived at my in-law's house, my sister-in-law and her husband hadn't shown up yet. They finally appeared right at the last minute, with my sister-in-law clearly sulking. It was obvious she wasn't remorseful and was resenting me for calling the police. Her husband, sitting next to her, looked clueless about why they were summoned. He seemed to have been called without being informed of the reason. During the discussion, he was shocked to hear about all the things his wife had done to our family. Unaware of how bad things had gotten, he apologized profusely, feeling sorry. My in-laws, seeing his reaction, asked my sister-in-law if she had anything to say. She just responded with, "Not really." She didn't seem to understand why she needed to apologize, acting as if she hadn't done anything wrong. She said, "I didn't do anything bad. The police came but didn't arrest me, so that means I didn't do anything wrong." Everyone else was dumbfounded by her logic. It seemed like a waste of time just lecturing her. Then out of the blue, my sister-in-law's husband declared he was divorcing her, and we were all puzzled because it seemed like they had a good marriage. Responding to our surprised looks, he confessed that he had reached his limit with her behavior. Since they got married, he hadn't complained about her neglecting housework during pregnancy or her going out for fun, thinking it was just stress from being a new parent. However, her carelessness with housework once led to a small fire, forcing them to move. She had insisted their son attend a prestigious kindergarten when she heard other kids in the neighborhood were applying. When he didn't get in due to lack of preparation, she was embarrassed and forced another move. Although his job did involve transfers, they weren't as frequent as their moves suggested. He revealed that the frequent moves were just because of his job, but also to maintain my sister-in-law's image. After their son failed the kindergarten entrance exam, she tried to get him into an international kindergarten. When that didn't work, they barely managed to get him into a missionary kindergarten. They chose a public elementary school only because their son wanted it, and my sister-in-law reluctantly agreed after her husband supported their son's wishes. He feared their son would be sacrificed for her vanity and had already been considering divorce. With her harassment coming to light, he decided to take action. He felt he had no choice but to announce the divorce now. My sister-in-law, somewhat aware of her actions, didn't dispute what he said but was taken aback by the sudden announcement. She asked, "Wait, what do you mean divorce? You never showed any signs of this." Then she started apologizing to us, hoping it would help. She claimed it was just a joke or a little prank, but we knew it wasn't. A joke or prank is something done among people who trust each other. My daughter knew all about what she had done to me, and such a hostile message was far too much for a third grader. Even adults would be scared if threatened like that. I told her that her husband criticized her, asking if she could say the same thing to her own child. Her actions were unimaginable for a parent. Just because someone is a parent doesn't mean they have parental feelings. Some people can't be real parents, and she was probably one of them. My husband, seeing her cry, told her sternly that crying wouldn't fix anything at her age and that tears wouldn't get her out of trouble. She cried even more, insisting she did nothing wrong and wasn't to blame, asking, "Why am I the only one being blamed? Is everyone ganging up on me? It's all because my brother married an older woman. My brother's wife should be smart, beautiful, and so on." Our marriage and her harassment are separate issues, right? We were all taken aback by her stubbornness, and even my husband was astonished by her lack of understanding. No one tried to comfort her. The discussion couldn't continue, so we decided to adjourn for the day. Her husband had to drag her to the car and take her home. Their divorce eventually happened, but it was messy due to her stubborn refusal to agree. Her son's accidental revelation might have influenced her decision to agree to the divorce. He shared what he saw with his friends without any malicious intent, but the parents who heard the rumor did not stay silent. After winter break at school, my nephew talked about having a Christmas party with his older cousins. At school, they used a class presentation to talk about their winter break memories, including stories about New Year's Day and video game consoles they received as Christmas gifts. We all exchanged presents. Then I saw my mom giving my cousin a special present just for her, and I thought it was unfair. When the teacher asked what kind of present it was, my nephew described exactly what he saw. The cute stuffed animal was all torn up with red stuff on it, resembling blood. The story became a major issue among the school teachers and escalated as children went home and told their parents. My daughter, still hurt by the incident, couldn't return to school since the Christmas party. Everyone knew she was related to my cousin, and it became a topic of speculation. I wanted her absence to remain unnoticed and undisturbed. I had planned to wait until my daughter was ready to go back to school on her own terms. My cousin didn't share the story to be funny, but to stop his mom's terrible behavior. He was also pained by her actions. Her husband realized he couldn't delay the divorce any longer and agreed to her demands to finalize it. By then, she had become infamous in the neighborhood for threatening children, and no one wanted to associate with her. She was even pelted with garbage when walking outside. Feeling cornered, she agreed to the divorce, hoping returning to her parents' home would end her nightmare. Her husband had no intention of giving up custody, but she readily relinquished it, saying, "I'll remarry someone much better than you. Kids are a nuisance." My sister-in-law, when remarrying, said in front of her son that she didn't need him. Despite her harsh words, her son stood up to her, declaring that he didn't need a terrible mom like her and that he had a cool dad, which was enough. He told her never to show her face to his cousin again. She left with a threat, but it was she who ended up in tears when she returned to her parents' house. They turned her away, banning her from ever coming back. With nowhere to go, she spent nights with random men for meals and shelter and resorted to borrowing from dangerous sources, accumulating massive debt. Unable to pay it off through part-time work, she eventually disappeared. My husband and his parents chose not to file a missing persons report, reasoning she was an adult and that it was better not to care for her if she returned. Since then, my daughter was able to go back to school and her cousin continued attending the same school. He has since taken it upon himself to protect her, and their bond has grown stronger, leading to a deeper friendship between us and my former brother-in-law. With my sister-in-law gone, there's been no more tension, and our family has built a very trusting and reliable relationship. My in-laws now lovingly call both my daughter and their grandson their dear grandchildren and have stepped in as guardians when needed.